Well, it's that time of year in the northern hemisphere of high heat and low humidity. So let's talk about the top 5 best and worst plants for low humidity. What's up, fellow plant enthusiasts? My name is Dylan and this is Baines Botanicals. Today I figured we could focus on the top 5 best and worst plants for low humidity conditions. For those of us who live in a colder climate during the wintertime, we have our heaters on, and that heat really dries out the air. Unfortunately, since most of our houseplants are tropical, they don't really like low humidity. They come from a place where the heat and the humidity levels are constant and they don't really fluctuate. So the drop in temperature and then the fact that you have that low humidity can be kind of traumatic for some plants. Before we talk about the best and worst plants for that, just a few general care tips for humidity. Humidifiers are obviously one of the best ways to go. I've got 3 running right now just to try to raise the humidity level a little bit. You generally want to shoot for about 50 to 60%. You can easily get one of these gauges. They're not that expensive, and that will tell you kind of what your humidity is. Mine's currently at about 30%. We had a little bit of a cold snap recently, so it's been like negative Fahrenheit, like below 0. So it hasn't been fun, and we've been running the heater a lot. So I'm trying to compensate a little bit. But you can also do the pebble tray method, where you just put a few rocks into a little saucer and make sure that the saucer has water in it, and you can set your plant on top of it. That will generate some ambient humidity. You can also group your plants together. Plants kind of radiate humidity naturally. So when you have your plants together, that can kind of help them. It's kind of like people and body heat. Like, people emit heat from their bodies, so if you group together, you tend to stay warmer. You can mist. I mean, misting's okay. Misting can be a little tricky if your plants are cold, because that's going to make them potentially colder. But a lot of people say that misting doesn't really do much good unless you mist like all the time. But I personally don't mist that much, but that's just me. Anyway, let's start with the worst. Let's end this video on an optimistic note. So starting with the worst, I think number 5 for me would be Monstera. And I've got my Thai Constellation Monstera right here. It's got a little bit of brown on the white variegation. Plants don't tend to enjoy having white variegation. So if you have big splotches of white, there's a decent chance that it might turn brown if you're not taking good care of it. But Monsteras just don't respond well to low humidity because they are very tropical plants. In fact, they are kind of the epitome of what you think of when you think of like big tropical lush jungles and things. So because of that, they tend to prefer more humidity. You can definitely keep them alive. Mine's doing fine, but it could probably be doing better. The next one up would be palms for number 4. I have a Livistonia back here. You can kind of see my Trachycarpus. I've got a couple other ones scattered. I've got a couple upstairs too. Palms, again, come from a place where it's just constantly humid, like they're next to the beach, or they're in a place where it rains a lot and where it doesn't really get cold. So not only is it cooler in here, it's probably about 65 or 70. It's cooler than it would be in a tropical area, but there's also a lot less humidity. So you'll start to see brown tips on palms, and that's just a sign of lack of humidity. It can be a sign of lack of water as well, but if you're watering regularly, you might just not be giving your palms enough humidity, and that's normal. So just something to keep in mind. Number 3, I think, is begonias. I don't actually have a begonia. I don't really like begonias that much. I think they're a little too hard to take care of. And in my experience, they don't last that long. There are definitely begonias that can live for years, no problem, but they are rather finicky, and so I don't have any. But begonias, they need that humidity. They need ample light as well, and they need a very finicky watering schedule where they need to kind of stay constantly moist, but not too moist because then they'll rot. But they're just one of those plants that they don't like being dry. So that's why they kind of landed at number 3. Number 2 would be prayer plants. And I'm using prayer plant as kind of a blanket term for the 5 genera of houseplants in Marantacea that are Stramanthe, Tenanthe, Maranta, Calathea, and Goapertia. And I've got my sad little Stramanthe right here, and it kind of looks like little tacos at this point because the leaves have curled up. They're lacking humidity. It probably needs to be watered, although the soil doesn't really feel that dry, but not doing too well. Prayer plants don't like winter at all. If you lose a plant over the winter, it's probably going to be a prayer plant. It's just how it is. I also have a Calathea here. In my opinion, this is one of the hardier Calatheas. Maybe people have had a different experience, but this particular one, is this Rosso? Calathea Rosso? Or no, Calathea rufibarbara, baby. I think it's rufibarbara. Anyway, this one usually does decent, but it will also start to curl its leaves if it's lacking water or not getting enough humidity. You'll get those brown tips. So again, not fun. Just one of those ones you have to keep an eye on. And then number 1, the number 1 worst houseplant for low humidity is going to be ferns. Ferns are plants that grow in the understory of the forest. They come from a very kind of wet, moist, I know everybody hates that word, but I can't think of another word, environment where there's just moisture in the air all the time, basically. They never really dry out. And when you have them as houseplants, you can't let them dry out. This actually is one of the hardier ferns in the fern canon or whatever. This is an asplenium, a bird's nest fern, and even when I move it, you can kind of see that it's pretty rigid. These fronds are pretty solid. Like, they're already crinkled. They're kind of more adaptive to a low humidity environment and low moisture. Of course, I don't have it in terracotta. You guys see that I mostly use terracotta, but this one I don't. And actually the soil is still wet, and that's good because these like to stay consistently wet. Not sopping wet, like you don't want them to rot, but just that soil needs to retain some moisture. Things like adiantum, the maidenhair fern, a lot of nephrolepis, like the Boston ferns, Divalia, rabbit's foot, they just need more humidity because they're finer, they're lacier. They're not as hardy as, say, asplenium. But ferns in general, they just need humidity. So again, I guess if you lose any plant over the wintertime, it's probably going to be a fern. But not this one. I'm going to keep it alive, I swear. I do have a nephrolepis back here. Oh, it's heavy. I think this particular nephrolepis is a little hardier. So far I don't have, you notice I don't have any browning on it. I think this is a good choice. I got to look more into what type of nephrolepis this is, but so far I'm pleased because it's been doing well. All right, let's switch gears. Now let's go to the top 5 best houseplants for a low humidity environment. These are going to be the plants that are generally easier to care for than most other plants, and you won't have to worry too much about your humidity levels with these plants. I gotta take a drink. I left this water in my car overnight and it turned into a popsicle, so that's cool. Number 5 would be, for me, Dracaena. I've got, let's see, what do I have for Dracaena? I have this white jewel Dracaena with its kind of long stripes of white variegation and its dark green. Very pretty. They're just pretty hardy. Like, they don't have a problem with humidity. And of course, the main, most popular branch of Dracaena, the X sansevieria plants, the snake plants, these might be the hardiest plants of all, like of all the plants. Like, these can stand up to lack of humidity, no problem. Lack of water, maybe not lack of sun so much, but yeah, these are solid choice for any houseplant owner. Good beginner houseplant, and one that should definitely survive the winter. Next, number 4 would be Aglaonema. In my experience, Aglaonema tends to stand up fairly well to lack of humidity. It still needs some, it still needs to be watered and everything, but in general, it does pretty well. I've got an Aglaonema up on the top shelf. It's kind of good where it's at. I'm not gonna grab it because it's gotten kind of big, but it is, if you watch my Dracaena video, or I'm sorry, my Aglaonema video, I do have it in that. It's got the beautiful white stems and everything. And it's doing well. I'm looking up at it and there's no brown on the margins, no brown anywhere on it. So I'm pretty happy about that, despite the low humidity I have right now. Number 3 is going to be philodendron. Most philodendrons will do okay with low humidity. They do still need some, and they do better when they have humidity, but they can do okay without it. This is my lemon lime. I think they're called lemon lime. And these beautiful chartreuse leaves, they're not crinkled, they're not browning. They're holding up quite well, again, despite the low humidity. And I have quite a few philodendrons. I think I have more philodendrons than any other plant. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones that you can see in the camera. Let's move this. These plants are out of control. I do have my recently acquired Ring of Fire, and it's still doing pretty well. This new growth is still kind of hardying up a little bit, but yeah, this one's doing nicely. My tortum's doing okay. I think my cats may have been chewing on it slightly. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe that's just... and then I've got some new growth here, but the tips aren't brown. It's doing fine. I also have... What other philodendrons do I have? I don't even know. They're around here someplace in this mess of plants. I guess I do have a regular heteroraceum green philodendron back there, and it's doing fine. Number 2 is kind of a combo. I said Epipremnum and Scindapsus because they're so similar. Scindapsus is probably the weaker of the two. Depending on the species of Scindapsus you have, kind of determines its hardiness. But I do have this. If I can get some of it out here. I do have a Scindapsus dark form, which is the Trebui or whatever, but it's like the really dark leaves. These are dark like a rubber tree, like a Ficus elastica. It's a pretty cool plant. I got pretty lucky finding it. It's pretty big now, but yeah. And Epipremnum in general, I've got my golden back there. And my Cebu Blue, my Epipremnum Palladium is upstairs, and I also got an Epipremnum Aplissimum recently. In my opinion, the Aplissimum doesn't seem as hardy as the other Epipremnums, but I don't have a ton of experience with it yet. But it doesn't seem to hold up to not being watered. I've noticed that it doesn't really like to dry out like some of the other Epipremnums can, but yeah. But still, just Epipremnums in general are some of the hardier plants. And number 1, you may have guessed, based on what's behind me, are cacti and succulents. And I just went ahead and put all those together. Cacti and succulents come from dry environments, so it's unsurprising that they make great houseplants for low humidity. They should survive the winter just fine as long as the temperatures don't dip too much in here. They'll be great. And I mean, everything on that shelf, I think, except for my golden pothos that's trailing, everything over there is either a cactus or a succulent or euphorbia or crassula or whatever. So those are definitely plants that if, let's say you live in like a really cold climate and you're running the heater a lot, succulents are a great choice because they're not really going to be affected by the lack of humidity. So this was kind of a long video. hopefully you guys got some tips or some enjoyment out of that. There are a lot of other plants that are kind of in the middle ground. I mean, like chlorophytum and spathiphyllum. I mean, they don't really like being dry either, but they can withstand it enough. You might get some brown tips and everything. Tillandsia is another one that, you always got to spray it, the air plants, to make sure that they're getting their water and their nutrients that way. Trying to think of what else is back here. Syngoniums do all right. Syngoniums are more sensitive to not getting enough water than they are not getting enough humidity. I think that's probably about it I have for this video. So let me know what your experience is with humidity. These are all based on my personal experience. I think that a lot of people in general would agree with what I've selected, but everybody has a different experience with plants because we all have different homes and everything. So let me know what yours is. Let me know what you would add to that list or maybe change. And yeah, I'm gonna get some other videos out to you guys real soon. Thank you so much for following and liking and subscribing and interacting with me. I look forward to the comments on this video, and keep your plants humid. I know it sucks this time of year. I hate winter. It's just cold and dark and nasty, and I don't like it. So, but we're gonna get through it together. And you people living in the tropics, my buddy that lives in Trinidad, where it's tropical all year, how dare you? So anyway, thank you guys, and I will talk to you very soon. Thank you.